Good morning, everyone. In 2022, Governor Whitmer's task force released recommendations for juvenile justice reform throughout Michigan. A few weeks ago, we had an opportunity to hear explained in detail the 30+ recommendations by Director Jason Smith of MCYJ and U of M Professor Kimberly Thomas. Now, our League of Women Voters Juvenile Justice Advocacy team welcomes you all to a follow-up with our prosecutor, Mr. Eli Savit. My name is Amelia Jane. I'm honored to be a part of this League of Women Voters team of Washtenaw County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan voter education organization encouraging informed, active participation in government. While the League does not support candidates nor parties, we do take positions on issues we have studied. Our programs will not necessarily represent these positions, but provide forums to increase understanding of public policy issues. So, Susan Ashmore, I'll pass the mic to you. Thank you for introducing Eli.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Susan Ashmore, and it's with pleasure and deep gratitude that we welcome Eli Savit, as stated, prosecutor of Washtenaw County, who agreed to update us on the impact to Washtenaw County of the 32 recommendations made by the Juvenile Justice Reform Task Force. We also hope to learn how we, as a group, can support these reforms in Washtenaw County. And we request that you stay muted, please. And also, please put your questions in the chat. And at 9:45, Jane will monitor those questions. For those of you who may not know, Eli Savit is a lawyer, law professor, and a stated prosecuting attorney in Washtenaw County. His areas of expertise include civil rights, education law, environmental protection, state and local government, and criminal justice reform. Prior to his election as prosecuting attorney, Eli served as senior legal counsel in the office of Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, and also as law clerk to Supreme Court Justices Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Eli is also a lecturer at the University of Michigan Law School. And before I yield the floor, I want to let you know that Eli has already declared that he prefers to be addressed as Eli. And with that, Eli, I yield the floor.
All right, and you know, I will start off by saying that part of the reason that I prefer to be called Eli is because I was a teacher in my former life. I was an 8th grade U.S. history teacher, and that is the only time in my life that I've responded to Mr. Savit. So I don't want to blur lines here, you know, and I just prefer to be called by my first name. I will say that actually one of my former students is now working in the prosecutor's office for us, and he is the only one that calls me Mr. Savit because he can't, you know, you always call your teachers Mr. Miss, you always call your coaches coach, whatever, right? And that really leads, you know, I wanted to start with that because juvenile justice and really making sure that we are doing right by our kids is something that is near and dear to my heart. Again, I started my career as a teacher. You know, I've focused a lot of my career on education law, and it is my belief not just that you know, doing right by our kids is the most important things that we can do as a community and as a society. But I also think it's probably one of the most important things that we can do to ensure public safety, because if we are doing right by our kids, if we're giving our kids the resources that they need to thrive and to move forward in a positive direction in their lives, it means that you don't see those kids coming through the adult criminal legal system later on down the road. And, you know, we're going to be focused on, of course, what we're doing in the juvenile justice system. And I'm going to talk about what is being done locally, and then you know, happy to you know, talk about the recommendations. But I want to emphasize that though obviously my current role involves the kids who are coming through the justice system, that it is just as, if not more important, quite candidly, to make sure that we are investing in youth, investing in schools, investing in community programs for young people across the board, because though we're of course trying in partnership with so many others to get the kids that do make mistakes, that do come through our juvenile system back on the right track, a better outcome would be that they don't come through even our juvenile system to begin with. So the focus is on juvenile justice once somebody is court involved, but I just want to emphasize that can't and shouldn't be our exclusive focus when we're talking about young people, because quite candidly, an investment in our young people is the best option, because that's what stops them from getting to the juvenile system and ultimately the adult system in the first place. So I just want to, I just want to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Washtenaw County. And, I'm proud to be a part of this community and this legal system here, because frankly, I think that, in terms of the recommendations, we are already doing a lot together that is that we see coming out of the recommendations from the governor's task force. Now, there are some issues that are statewide, and I'll flag some of those, but really working together with our juvenile justice partners, the court system, the Children's Center, and community partners, I think we are setting a model here, frankly, in Washtenaw County for how to have both a juvenile justice system that keeps our community safe, but also in the long term sets our kids up to thrive. And I'll start with, sort of what we're doing in our office and our way of looking at juvenile delinquency petitions. One of the first policies that I put in place when I took office was a policy around juvenile charging. And what it said effectively is we are no longer in the prosecutor's office going to funnel kids into the delinquency system for stuff that is generally just like adolescent misbehavior that you have seen kids doing for time immemorial. And that means stuff like vaping, right? Or a school fight that doesn't have serious injuries, right? Or adolescent experimentation with marijuana or alcohol. I am not saying that there should not be consequences for those things. I do believe that there should be consequences. But the truth of the matter is that in many parts of our community, that kind of stuff has always been treated as a non-criminal matter. I grew up here. I grew up in Ann Arbor, right? And I did a lot of the stuff that could technically be charged as with a delinquency petition for young people. And I will note at this point that I'm technically admitting to crimes. So I want to note that the statute of limitations has run on all of this, and so I can no longer be charged. But look, when I was in middle school and in high school, I got in scuffles in school, right? I got in some fights, right? I can remember when I was a teenager, when I was 16 years old, I was drinking beer in the park, in Burns Park, near my home with some of my other teenage friends. And cops, police department, came up to us. They saw us drinking. We were clearly underage. And they said, pour that out, very sternly, pour that out, go home now. And the next time we see you here, you're gonna be in trouble, but we're letting you off with a warning this time. Not every young person gets that benefit, right, across the country. And just as this kind of stuff has been dealt with by parents, by schools, right, school disciplinary procedures, for a lot of people, a lot of young people, and they've been given that chance, that opportunity to grow, to learn from their mistakes without involving the formal criminal legal system, so too do I think that same grace should be extended to all kids. We should be giving kids an opportunity to learn, to grow. There should be accountability. There should be consequences. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's got to involve the state, that it's got to involve a formal juvenile delinquency process. Now, of course, there's more serious stuff that somebody could do, that a young person could do, that does warrant a delinquency petition. And we've got a juvenile division. We regularly file those, but that standard stuff that everybody on here probably knows, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are doing, have always done. It's not something that necessarily needs to involve the criminal legal process. So that's one thing, and so we're just not charging those cases anymore, and it's worked out honestly fine. I review our denials, every day, and relatively frequently we'll get a school fight that comes on our desk, and it's going to be denied under that policy unless there were aggravating circumstances, right? Unless it involves serious injury, unless it involves something like premeditation, or we're really worried about a kid. And for the most part, the kids that come in on that, we don't really see them again. It's not somebody that you got in a fight in the hallway when you're a freshman in high school that necessarily means that you're on the wrong path. These can be dealt with in other ways that don't involve the formal legal system. Now, that does not address a whole host of circumstances that we do think there are interventions needed, and this is something that coheres with the governor's task force recommendations, which provides really strong emphasis and recommends strongly diversionary opportunities for young people. And I'll just break down for a second what diversion is. Diversion is a opportunity if you are charged with a crime, or technically in the juvenile space, if you are a delinquency petition is filed against you, you're given the opportunity to do everything right, before anything formal happens, before you get something that's on your record. And so it can look differently for different people. It can involve substance use treatment, it can involve mental health treatment, it can involve workforce development. Often for young people, the big thing that we want is for them to go to school, to take accountability. And the deal is, look, if you do all this stuff and you stay out of trouble, then after a certain period of time, the charges against you will be dismissed. In the juvenile system, there is an option to put something on the formal calendar or the informal calendar. And the informal calendar is effectively a diversionary track. The petition is filed, but it's, there's not like really a formal legal process that would end in a adjudication if the young person does everything right, if they abide by terms of their probation, if they do what probation recommends. And we put, I would say probably the majority of kids, or the vast majority of kids that we see coming through on the informal track, because that's the track that gives them the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, to grow, and not saddle them, and while avoiding saddling them with a formal juvenile adjudication. I have to say here, and I'm going to continue to come back to this. I'm the prosecutor. The prosecutor's office is one big part of the criminal legal system, but we are far from the only part. And none of this works if we're not working together with partners. It's why I'm so grateful to be a part of this community, because we've got great probation officers that are thoughtful, that want to see kids succeed. We've got great courts that sort of take the same position, want to see kids succeed, and we all work together on this stuff to try to help kids get back on the right path if they're on that informal docket. So that's again, consistent with the governor's task force, and this is why I say Washtenaw County is really sort of trying to lead the way here. We see a lot of kids that come through, and again, it's more serious. We're not talking about a kid that was caught vaping in school, or a kid that had a scuffle with another kid. These are cases that need to be charge, but we are able to put them on a track together with probation, together with the courts, that allows them the opportunity to avoid that formal adjudication, learn from their mistake, and ultimately sets them on the path to success. So that's probably our primary diversionary option, is just placing somebody on the informal calendar. But we've also been working with community partners to build up new programs that are really sort of unique and can intervene even at an earlier point. And one of them that I'm really proud of here is our Washtenaw County My Brother's Keeper Formula 734 project. And I'll just as context, Washtenaw My Brother's Keeper is the initiative that was started by former President Obama to connect young men of color with older men of color. And we have a very active and wonderful local chapter here. And even before I took office, one of the projects that they had was it's called Formula 734. And what it does is it brings together young people from across the county, connects them with like older, and when I say older, I mean like my age or maybe a little bit younger, but for a teenager, they're old. And they co-create a hip hop album. They co-create a musical album. But what's great about it is it provides mentorship to younger people. Before they do any recording session, they'll sit in a circle and they'll explore the themes of that day's session. They'll talk about things like, what does it mean to be a Black man in the era of George Floyd? What does it mean to be a good father? What's our relationship like with women? So you have these real, authentic conversations, but it's not contrived. It's used, as sort of a muse to inform that day's recording session. And there's workforce development opportunities too, because built into the program are things like event promotion and videography and photography, in addition to just the recording space. So they did that. They created an album. And Jamal Bufford, who runs the program and is actually he's a Huron High School graduate who's a few years older than me, and he's a rapper that I actually sort of followed around when I was in high school. I was like a fanboy of his group Athletic Mike League. He came to me and he said, "Look, I think we can take some kids from the juvenile system, because isn't this exactly what all the research and the data shows is most effective at getting somebody back on the right track, that authentic engagement with adults, that mentorship opportunity, right? The workforce development that I was talking about, the opportunity to engage in sort of restorative dialogue. And it's an authentic space, right? Because it's not, like I said, it's not contrived. It's not just somebody going and lecturing a kid. And I said, that's a great idea. So we went out together, we got some external funding. And what we do now in appropriate cases is we'll give a young person who seems like they may be a good fit for the program a choice. Look, we can move down the traditional path of juvenile adjudication or charging or whatever, or you can enroll in the Formula 734 diversion program. And what you've got to do is you got to go to school, you've got to stay out of trouble, and you've also got to go to these recording sessions, right? You're going to participate in this program. And we give them the choice, right? It's up to you. And if you do all that and you stay out of trouble for 6 months, right? We don't see you come through again. We won't even file the charges against you, right? It'll be as though it never happened, because after a 6-month period of time, we can be pretty confident that you're back on the right track. So they've done one cohort with this, and they're putting together their second, and it's been phenomenally successful. We haven't seen any of the kids that engaged in that cohort, engaged in that opportunity with Formula 734, come back through our system. Every single one of them that we deflected out through that didn't come back. They were successfully discharged, and we didn't even file their cases. And what I like about that is again, it's authentic, right? It's not some contrived program. It speaks to a young person's interest. They're able to get that mentorship. They're able to get those opportunities. And at the end of the day, there is tons of research out there that shows that is exactly what we should be doing to get young people who may have made a mistake, who may be getting off on the wrong track, back on the right track. So that's another example of a diversionary program that we're building up here, consistent with the recommendations of the governor's joint task force. The other thing that I'm excited about that's going to start relatively soon here is the courts, the public defender's office received a $750,000 U.S. Department of Justice grant to build out a diversionary program for young caregivers, for young people who may have caregiving responsibilities. And we were one of just 3 sites nationwide to receive this grant. But the idea behind this is we see regularly, and this actually sort of crosses over from the juvenile system also into the young adult system, but we see regularly young people that are coming through the system that have significant responsibilities as caretakers, right? They may be young parents. They may be caring for a brother or a sister. They may be caring for a elderly parent or grandparent. And the needs that young people like that have are unique, specialized, and different than the needs that some others might have. And if we if we send somebody through the traditional criminal process and don't address those underlying needs, it's very likely that those young people are going to come back. And then there's going to be really cross-generational effects of this, because if your behavior continues to escalate and we've got no choice but to send you to jail, but to send you to prison, right? Then you're a caretaker. You've got a young child. That child is not going to have a parent. Their stability may be impacted. Right. So the idea behind this program, and we're partnering with the Corner Health Center over in Ypsilanti, is when we see young people, both in the, it can be juveniles or it can be young adults. It's from 12 to 26 are the age ranges on this. We will, if there's no public safety risk, we, the public defender's office, and the courts will ultimately sign off on this, put you into a diversion program through Corner Health Center. And this can range from 6 to 12 months. There are check-ins along the way. But what Corner Health has available, and they're a trusted community partner, is they have substance use programming, they have mental health programming, they have parenting classes, they have workforce development, right? They can address physical health needs. They can provide mentorship. They already do these mentorship programs for young dads, for example, right? So you see a case manager at Corner Health Center. They set you up with an individualized diversion plan. Not everybody is going to need every single thing that they offer, but they're going to set you up with an individualized plan, which may include all the above, substance use treatment, mental health, workforce development, mentorship, parenting classes, whatever they decide you need. They'll set you up with that individualized plan. And if you do everything that is asked of you, if you go through that program successfully, right, you go to the required programming, maybe a condition can be finish your education, get job training, what have you. And again, you don't commit any new crimes. In 6, 9, or 12 months, depending on how much progress the court sees you're making, that case is going to be dismissed. And again, that's success, right? If there's no imminent public safety risk, the best thing that we can do is get somebody who's on the wrong path and may need help and may need resources on the right path. If after 6, 9, or 12 months, it's clear that somebody is back on the right path and they haven't done something again that's brought them onto the criminal legal system's radar, that's a win, right? So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited that we have Corner as a working partner, because again, we can't do any of this alone. And that's going to be starting up, I believe, this summer. And the model, I think, will be a national model. And it's not just me that's saying that, because again, the U.S. Department of Justice saw fit to give just one of 3 grants to Washtenaw County, which I think should really put an exclamation point on the great community work that's being done here and how well positioned we really are to be leaders in this space. So the final thing and I'll mention one other thing that's on the horizon. There has been a working group that's been meeting for the past 2 years or so around standing up a youth assessment center in Washtenaw County. And this is a national model that has been successfully implemented elsewhere. And the fundamental issue that we're trying to address through the youth assessment center is this. Oftentimes, law enforcement is called out on a young person. A parent may call because a young person, teenager is, I don't know another way to say this, but just like out of control, right? Maybe beating up on a sibling, right? Maybe just being defiant. And they may be going through some stuff, right? And the parents don't necessarily want their kid to be on the sort of criminal delinquency path, but they call law enforcement, they call the police because quite candidly, they don't have any other options left. They've tried everything else and it's a last resort. So law enforcement, as of right now, the only real place they have to take a kid like that is to the detention center if they want to sort of lodge them, right? If they need to just sit down for a while. And I have a ton of admiration and respect for our children's center here because they do great work, try to get kids back on the right track. But the fact that a kid might go to the detention center for a lot of parents may be a disincentive for calling if they need help. And in addition, sometimes it's not really what the kid needs. So the assessment center model, it's something that's been successfully implemented in a number of other communities, provides an alternative for law enforcement to say, look, instead of taking you to be lodged, we can take you to a assessment center, which will assess what is going on. What do you need, right? Are there mental health services that you need? Are there, substance use issues going on here? What's going on in the kid's life that is causing them to act like this? So it's an intercept even before the point where a kid might go to the detention center. And, again, the earlier the intervention, the better. And layering on those options and giving law enforcement that sort of option for where to send a kid, where to take a kid, right, is just something that will be, I think, tremendously meaningful and has proved very successful in other communities. So discussions on that are ongoing. Obviously, something like this requires resources, right? We're working with community mental health on this. They're a partner. We're working with the Washtenaw Intermediate School District. We need resources in order to stand this up. And, I know one of the things is that a question that is posed to me is what can folks do to support? I really encourage folks to support that when this comes up as a option for the community and to support funding for that. The other thing that I'll just briefly mention, because I flagged at the start that the best thing we can do is to focus on all our kids, not just the ones that have already come through the juvenile system, is there has been conversations since time immemorial about the need for a community recreation center on the east side of Washtenaw County. A lot of times, you talk to young people and to a person almost, if you ask them, well, why were you doing this? Why did you get in trouble? What could have been done to get you off that path? One of the most common answers is there's just nothing else to do here, right? And having a community center, having a safe space where young people can be young people, can engage in recreational activities that's open to families on the east side of the county is a tremendously important community benefit, but it is also a tremendously important crime prevention tool, to be perfectly candid with you. And so I'd also encourage folks that are interested in these issues to strongly support and advocate for that, because it's really long overdue that we have something like that on the east side of Washtenaw County. I do want to focus in the last part of my uninterrupted monologue here. I do want to focus on the subset of kids that do not fall within any of the categories that I mentioned earlier, because I want to be honest about this. There are kids that come through our system that are engaging in behavior that is far more serious than normal adolescent misbehavior, that are not appropriate candidates for the diversionary programs that we have here, and that do need to be separated from the community for a while for public safety reasons. You think about kids that are stealing cars, kids that are breaking into homes, kids that are shooting guns at one another, or engaging in gunplay, right? Those are really serious incidents, and they're ones that we need to take seriously. One of the most important recommendations in the governor's task force, I believe, is to figure out a way around what is currently in the state of Michigan a residential placement crisis. And just so folks know how the system works, the juvenile system works, when there is a young person that poses that threat to the community, the idea is not that they sit in a local detention center for a long period of time. The idea is that they are placed in residential placement, right? And it's a sort of statewide model. There's different residential placement sites around the state. What we have seen happening statewide, and this is why this is so important, is there is a shortage of beds. There's a lack of funding for residential placement sites for young people, which leads to a few far less than ideal outcomes. One is that you have kids staying in detention centers and local detention centers for far longer than they should be there, because again, the detention centers are really geared towards shorter term stays. And I'm proud to say that this isn't as much of an issue in Washtenaw County, though it has been an issue in the past, where you had kids that, because there was a lack of placement sites, staying for 6-9 months in the juvenile center. If you've been following any of the stories that I think that it's the Detroit Free Press has been doing about the detention center over in Wayne County, which is full to the brim and has led to some really troubling stories. A big part of that is because there is a statewide lack of residential placement beds, and so the kids that do need to be separated from the community there are just sort of all congregated there, and they got no place else to go because of that shortage of residential sites. Part of the reason for this is because there were, frankly, some residential sites that were not abiding by the standard of care that I think any of us would want for any of our kids, and the state pulled their license. An example of this was there was a placement site on the west side of the state in Kalamazoo, in which a young person was killed by a worker there who kneeled on his neck, right? And so of course that's not acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable to any of us. And so the state pulled its license, but and this is consistent with the governor's recommendations. We cannot pit the quality of the placement site against the availability of beds, because we are doing no favors to anybody in the community, the young people that need the access to the beds, their families, by simply pulling accreditation, pulling contracts from residential placement sites that are not living up to those standards, and then not replacing them with something else. So to my mind, honestly, like that is one of the most important parts of the governor's task force recommendations, is to solve the residential placement crisis, and I'll call it a crisis, in the state of Michigan, to provide more funding for these placement sites, and then also to make sure that they are of high quality, because look, at the end of the day, young people's brains are still developing. We know this, and where we send them, what we are doing with them, is really going to impact the path that they go down. So it needs to be high quality, it needs to be rehabilitative, but they also need to be available. And I'm happy to talk more about that. I just want to close with a story, because I've been talking a lot about programs and data and everything like that, right? But these are unique human stories, and I want to just close with an opportunity that I got last week to witness how well, in many cases, our juvenile system is working here in Washtenaw County. I had a probation officer that reached out to me, and he sent me a picture of me with a young person that I had taken at a community event. It turned out, and I had no idea when I took this picture, it turned out that the young person that I took the picture with was actually somebody that our office had a case with, right? That was in the juvenile system. The probation officer was kind, caring, and cares about rehabilitation. Said this young man has done great. Is scheduled for discharge on a deferred disposition case next week. He would like to. He sent me this picture. He's very proud of it. He would like to invite you to be there to celebrate his accomplishments and to celebrate him getting back on the right track. And so I said yes, and I had the opportunity to go. It was virtual, but I was on Zoom. And this is a young person who now is, he's still in high school, but he's like one credit away from graduating. He's accomplished in many other things. He's got plans to go to college. He is remorseful for his actions. He wrote a very heartfelt and reflective essay about what he had done and how he planned to do better in the future. He's got big plans. He seems by all accounts like a great kid. And you could see his mom, who was by his side during this hearing to formally get rid of the charges against him, just beaming with pride in how far her son had come since he'd made a mistake, a bad mistake that had landed him on the juvenile justice system's radar. When that young person grows up and has a family of their own and is successful in his career, he will probably rarely think about his experience with the juvenile system because it will be a bump in the road. It'll be something that he overcame, right? And he will have gone on to lead a long and successful life. But that's success, right? Success means that the first time you come in through the system is the last time. Success means setting a young person up to thrive. Success means giving young people the opportunity to grow. That doesn't happen if it's not for compassionate, caring, detail-oriented probation officers, courts, prosecutors, and community programs that allow young people that chance. At the end of the day, these are young people, right? These are kids that are at a crossroads a lot of the time. And the best thing that we can do is to set them up for success. And success means that they don't look back and they say, this was the pivotal moment in my life, even though maybe it was, right? Success means that it fades into memory. Success means that one mistake that somebody made was the last mistake of that magnitude that they made. And success means that we never see them again in the juvenile or criminal system. And that's what we're working towards here. Those are the partnerships that we have. And again, I'm really proud to be working in this community with so many wonderful partners because it is allowing young people to succeed, young people to thrive, and ultimately keeping our community safer. So with that, that was exactly, I think, about 40 minutes, which is rare for me. I usually go on and on, but would love to just have a conversation, take questions.
Before I turn it over to thank you so much for that very comprehensive review of your office's priorities. I just wanted to, because I see that the questions have mounted in the chat, before I turn it over to Jane, I just wanted to ask, as a participant in your juvenile justice working group prior to your being sworn in and after, one of the issues that you were kind of surprised about was the lack of data collection in Washtenaw County. And I just wondered, and of course we all know that best practices are based on data. And I just wondered if you've been able to identify stakeholders and develop a consensus on metrics to track, because of course this is one of the aspects, one of the serious recommendations in the task force report. And Michigan was even referenced in the governor's report and in the National Governor's Report in February of this year. And is Washtenaw County participating in developing a statewide data collection process?
Yeah, so the statewide data collection process is really being led by the state level, at least from my perspective. And I can't speak for other stakeholders involved here, the courts or anything like that. But I know that is a priority of the states, and that's one of the big priorities in the governor's task force recommendations. So I'm excited to see that. Frankly, data broadly in the criminal legal system is not great because for the most part, the data systems that we do have are set up just as sort of case management tools, right? They're not set up for like backward queries for, being able to run regressions to see what are the intervention points, how are we doing, what kinds of cases are we seeing over and over again. And that leads to sort of policy making by anecdote rather than, through empirical data. So I'm strongly supportive of that. But at least I haven't been personally involved with the statewide efforts to build that out. Now, what we have done in Washtenaw County is, not waiting for the states, and we've gotten some grants to look into the aggregate data and see if there's any trends they can see. And we've got sort of two separate projects. One with our office really looking at adult criminal system data, and that's been a massive project looking at racial disparities and potentially disparate treatment by the prosecutor's office. But then there also has been a researcher that's been looking at juvenile data, both looking at racial disparities, but then also sort of intervention points. And I have seen a rough cut of that data. One of the things that stuck out most to me is that a huge percentage of the kids that are coming through the delinquency side of things were previously the subject of a neglect or abuse petition, right? So these are kids that were subject to significant trauma earlier on in their childhood, which led to it appears that it led to. I'm always, don't want to confuse correlation with causation, but the correlation is very strong. Led them to be the subject of a delinquency petition, which I think really gets to the core issues at play here. By the time we're involved in a lot of respects, we've already failed, right? Because necessarily for police, prosecutors, the court system to be involved, something bad has already happened. A kid has already made a mistake, gone down the wrong road. And that's why the investment early on, making sure the kids have, safe environments, they're not subject to trauma, is so tremendously important. And that's just from the rough cut of the data I've seen, but I think it highlights too the importance of data collection, because it provides really a overview as to what the intervention points could be to stop something bad from even happening in the first place.
Agreed. And are these metrics that are being tracked, are they available to us in the public? I mean, is there a way to know what is it that people are looking at? What do they care about? Is it?
It's not public. The juvenile data is not public yet. I think it will be at some point. This is not something that our office is fundamentally leading. The adult data is something that is focused on the prosecutor's office. That is nearing completion. There's a draft 83-page report that is very, very thorough, but we know that not everybody's going to read an 83-page report. So right now we're in the process of building out both a dashboard and a sort of simplified version of things, pared down version of things. So without losing the complexity of what is a very complex topic, people can understand what's going on in their justice system. And I expect all of that to be made public. I mean, the idea behind the project that we're leading was to make this public. It's called the Prosecutor Transparency Project, but I expect we'll have something ready for the public this summer.
Okay, thank you. And with that, because we've just passed the 9:45, Jane, I'll turn it over to you to monitor the questions.
Actually, I'm going to do the questions from the chat. So thank you. Thank you for that, Ellie. So you may have seen these, but I'll just go through them. So the first one is, the juvenile diversion options sound great. Can you give us some indication of how often it's used, how many young people have been diverted, and what kinds of violations can be diverted?
Yeah, so obviously there's a variety of programs here, and I don't have the full numbers at hand. Again, that gets to the lack of backward querying available in our sort of current case management system. I can say just sort of anecdotally that most young people that come through, if it's not a serious offense, like the kinds I was talking about, your home invasions, your automobile thefts, your stuff with guns, do get the opportunity to be placed at the very least on the informal calendar. That's sort of the norm. And so, we're talking about things like, shoplifting, retail fraud, right? Malicious destruction of property, a kid smashes a mailbox or something like that, or breaks the window of a car, something like that, right? More serious fights between young people, because we don't charge just like the general fist fights that, like I said, kids have been engaging in since time immemorial. But if there's a serious or aggravated injury, or there's something else there, then that's going to be something that we do have to charge. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily need to go towards that formal adjudication route. If we can put you on the informal calendar, and you stay out of trouble, so much the better. So those are the types of things that pretty regularly get on the informal calendar, and I'd say it's far more common than not for offenses like that.
Okay, thank you. Has there been significant pushback against diversion from others in the system, like from law enforcement or from victims?
Not really, honestly. Look, I'm not saying universally. Obviously, people have different opinions and certainly different opinions when it comes to certain cases. But this is one of the great things about working in this county is, I think we have partnerships and partners in the justice system that are all sort of working from the same playbook and recognize the need for intervention points and getting kids back on the right track. I'll just give you some examples. The assessment center that I was talking about, this was really work that started prior to me taking office. It was something that was led by the sheriff's office and community mental health and a variety of other community partners, because law enforcement, a lot of times law enforcement recognizes, like, I just wish I had a different option here, right? If the options are detention or nothing, or the formal system or nothing, like it's black and white. And you talk to a lot of officers on the ground, the real world is in a lot of shades of gray. Right. So they've actually been leaders on this. And that's why I say, nobody can do this alone. And it doesn't work if you don't have partners. So, though there may be obviously disagreements about, certain cases or the best way to go about doing things broadly, I would say in Washtenaw County, we are working from the same playbook, which is why I think we're positioned to really be a statewide leader in these regards.
Thank you. So there's a comment in the chat that minority, Black and brown youth's sentiment towards police is that police want and look forward to locking up Black and brown youth. It says negativity should be accounted for, wondering if mental health plays an issue there.
Well, I'll say a few things on this. One is, mental health is a real crisis, both for young people and for adults too, and it's been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. And I'm just speaking broadly here, but we had to do what we had to do COVID-wise to protect public health. But I don't think that any of us should turn a blind eye to the fact that wreaked havoc on a lot of young people, on a lot of families. And particularly if you are an adolescent, where your brain is hardwired for social development and for human connection. I mean, there's studies on this. Like, that is what adolescents are hardwired to seek out. And now you're put in isolation. You don't have those same opportunities, right? That can lead to real mental health concerns, which manifests itself not just in kids committing crimes, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. Like, yes, mental health drives, delinquent behavior, but it also manifests itself in suicidal ideation, in depression, and the like. So just on the mental health piece, absolutely, that's something we need to be cognizant of. And if you talk to any educator too, what they've seen over the past couple of years since school has been back in person is kids are acting like they're 2 grades younger than they actually are, which makes sense if you think about the fact that they were out of school for a year and a half, 2 years, right? So now you have like 9th graders that are acting like 7th graders, and I say this with all the love in my heart, as a former middle school teacher. 7th grade is the worst year of everybody's life, but now you're getting not just 7th grade, but the 9th graders that they're acting like 7th graders too, because that development, that social development, was really delayed. I don't have an easy answer to this, other than like I think we always talk about mental health and people point fingers and say, well, it's mental health, whatever. Great. If we can all agree at some level that mental health is a crisis, and you can, if you're a Republican, you can blame Democrats for shutdowns. I don't care. Right. Let's actually put some resources behind mental health for young people. And I'm not just talking here about, again, about the kids that are coming through the juvenile system, because really, again, that's a small percentage of the cases of kids that really need help and really need extra resources so that they're able to make up for what is really lost time in their development. Let's do a huge investment in mental health for everybody, for all kids, really everybody. So that's a mental health piece. On the piece about the lack of trust between law enforcement and young people, there's no question that this is an issue, right? That there, as a result of sort of decades of police misconduct, high-profile police misconduct cases, mass incarceration, the school-to-prison pipeline, as well as increased awareness of this, that there are a lot of communities that are distrustful of law enforcement. What I will say is, in part, that's why it's important to have these alternatives, right? To not just help the kids and give them an off-ramp that need it, but it also changes perception, right? If you have some confidence that what law enforcement is going to do with your child, right, is not just try to seek the most punitive approach, but in some cases try to get help, I think that can change perception. I also think just being out in the community can help change perceptions. And I was just before this, like we have a breakfast with the chief of police every couple of weeks, and the new chief in Ypsilanti, Kirk, was talking to him. He's been out in the community constantly. I've seen him at like every community event over the past 2 weeks on the east side of the county. Out there at the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, out there at the community gathering in Park Ridge Park. And if you can see police as being there for the community, not just at their when a crisis happens, not just when a crime is committed, not just really when something bad happens to the community, but being there in the community and for the community at the community's best, I think that helps build a lot of trust as well. And so I do think we're on the right path there, with especially law enforcement being forward facing, but let's not think that it's going to be an easy fix. There are decades of issues that all of us in the justice system, I think, have to own and try to move past. And trust can be lost quickly. Regaining it takes a lot of time, and it is a real issue that none of us should underestimate the magnitude of.
Great. We have 2 last questions that I'd love to get in. The first, do youth in Washtenaw County who do have a formal petition filed against them, do they get counsel at the very first stage? And is this provided without loading the cost onto their families?
Yeah. So our public defender's office does have juvenile attorneys who are assigned to juvenile cases. So yes.
Okay, thanks. And then can you just comment on the role that community resources such as the Dispute Resolution Center play in providing options for diversion of juveniles?
Yeah. And again, this is this is where we're fortunate in Washtenaw County to have community resources. And, I mentioned a couple of them in terms of the diversionary programs, but the Dispute Resolution Center is another that, has restorative justice capabilities. If you go to peacemaking court, they're partners there, and they can really help to solve, in a lot of cases, tough interpersonal conflicts where you don't necessarily need to have like the sort of formal system involved there, which is quite candidly what you see a lot in a lot of cases, right? Most crimes are relational. The crimes that stick out in everybody's minds are the sort of random stuff, but the vast majority of crimes are relational, and that's where having the Dispute Resolution Center and other community resources available really helps out.
Thank you. Susan, I'm going to turn it back over to you to wrap us up. And there is a question about whether the recording will be available.
Yes, this has been recorded, and it will be available on the League of Women Voters Washtenaw County website. So I don't know how long it takes to be posted, but it will be there. Maggie, do you know that? No, she doesn't know either. Okay. Anyway, Mr. Savit, sir, thank you so much. And by the way, your 8th grade, I didn't see that on your Wikipedia page. So.
Okay. Well, the great thing about Wikipedia is anybody can edit it. So if somebody wants to add that.
But thank you for taking the time to update us and respond to those 32 very serious recommendations from the task force, the Juvenile Justice Task Force. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all your involvement in this really important work. I appreciate you all.